Well, good Monday morning to you. Welcome to our Monday morning live edition of the Doctor's Nutrition Show. I'm your host, Jim Tabor, along with Doctors Jim and Janine Fox of Doctor's Nutrition, located on Cal and Lorraine Road in Gulfport, south of Pass Road. We do this every Monday morning. If you're just tuning in for the first time, this is a live show, and it is a live call-in show. And what we do is we have a topic that we've chosen since last week, and we talk about that topic. And if it if it has anything to do with you, you're invited to call in and ask any questions that you might have, or if you have any questions regarding health. That's what this show is all about. Our phone lines are open at 896-0713 or 800-349-0713. We're talking about this morning something that everybody has. I don't care who you are, everybody has got them, and several of them, matter of fact, in your body, and that's your joints.
Yes.
The part of the body where two or more parts of the body, or two or more bones meet to allow movement. And every bone in the body, except for the hyoid bone, which is in the throat, they meet up with at least one other bone at a joint. The shape of a joint depends on its function. I'm riding into work going, let's see, there's 1, 2, 3 right there.
Oh, yeah, there's tons.
Right there, right there.
Hundreds.
Hundreds of joints in the body.
Yes, I don't even know exactly how many, but there are a lot. Yeah. And there's different types of joints. You have your hinge joints and you have your ball and socket joints, and different joints are different due to movement and
we
what
even have
they
joints
need to
that
do.
Don't move. I mean,
I know
there's some in our cranium.
Yeah,
right.
The cranium don't move.
That doesn't move.
But they're still joints.
They're still joints.
And then you have your sacrum, which moves very little, but it does move.
Mm-hmm.
So like I said, all your joints do play a role.
Yeah, they do.
Yep.
Well, what we're going to talk about today is joint issues, how to avoid them if you can, how to treat them if you can, and what are some problems that joints can have?
Well, I think one of the first things people start seeing is pain on movement. In other words, when you start moving a joint, it starts to hurt. That's the problem, and that starts limiting your range of motion, how far you can move, that kind of thing. So that's the thing that starts, and that's what people pay attention to. It gets where you can't move quite as easily, so to speak, or as far as you did before. Now we think we've got a problem. That's a sign, and that's a sign you better start paying attention to it right now, because if you ignore it, it will kick you in the butt.
Yeah, it will get worse. Now,
it will get worse.
Problems you
There's
have
a joint
with
back there too. So
you got a joint back here too, right?
Problems with arthritis is one of your most common.
Right.
And what is arthritis? It is inflammation in a joint.
Right.
That's actually what arthritis is. So technically, if there's any inflammation, you can technically say it's some type of arthritis.
Right.
You also, in joints, you can actually have problems with stability in joints due to ligament problems, due to connective tissue. And of course, when you have muscle spasms, it'll affect the joint because the muscle itself is pulling, because you have attachments, on the bones from the muscles. So there's a lot of different, but muscles, ligaments, tendons, that all plays a role. And then everybody's heard of people that's had to have joint replacements.
Hips.
That's when it gets to the point of no return. And
Yeah.
there is that point of no return.
Right.
We suggest always that you do something for it before it gets to the point of no return. And you can't start once it's already there. And that's what we see so many people do.
Right.
They come in, I have bone on bone, what do I do? How can I rebuild it? Well, unfortunately, that don't really usually happen. There really isn't. What you want to do is the minute you start seeing that motion, pain on motion, and you start feeling you have a little arthritis, that's when you want to start doing something. You don't want to wait until it's to the point of joint replacement, which the good news today is they can do some of them, and they've gotten really good at doing joint replacements.
Right.
But
I run into people all the time that have had to have a joint replacement, and
it's common.
Got a good doctor and everything, and like you said, they've done
but
it
of
very
course,
well
there's
for 'em.
always risks to surgery, and it is pretty much
it's a pretty rough surgery.
Rough surgery. You're actually, depends on what you're doing. You're sawing into the bone. It's actually pretty. If you watch it, it's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah, if I don't know whether there's probably some YouTube videos of it.
Yeah,
you can see it, and it's rather, gruesome, so to speak.
That's why as people age, they don't. If you get upper age in the 80s, they sometimes don't want to do them.
Right.
Even if the joint is terrible, because your risk of having complications and dying from that is actually going to be higher.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So, and then they don't like to do it when you're too young, because the joint's only going to last so many years. I mean, joint replacements, they know, actually don't last forever. If you're like 30, you're probably going to have it replaced in your lifetime, as long as you live long enough.
Mm-hmm.
So again, when you see first signs of things, that's when you should start paying attention and doing what it takes to help your joints out.
At what age should we start doing preventative measures?
In your 20s?
Actually, at
Probably.
least 20s. And
At least 20s.
if you're an athlete,
I was going to say,
if you're an athlete,
soon.
right, when you're in teens, because I've seen some athletes at 20 be already pretty
broke up.
Pretty broke up, actually. It depends on what sport they play, depends on what kind of
Right.
injuries they've had, but you see a lot of injuries. The more aggressive you are with your body, the more injuries you're going to have.
Yep.
And the more injuries you've had, joint problems, you might have had something when you're young, and it don't show up until later.
Yeah.
I'm going to age myself here. And us,
Yep.
you probably remember this guy that I'm going to mention, this football player from the New York Jets years ago, back in the late 80s, Mark Gastineau. He was huge. I met him, and I got to shake his hand, and his hand, like engulfed mine, but his fingers, just from all those years of playing football, you know, were just kind of, you know, you could tell he had some major joint problems.
It's the repetitive trauma. But I don't care whether you're Mark Gastineau or whether you're, you know, doing a physical job of some sort where it's a repetitive motion. I've seen a lot of people, even a brick mason or something like that. Anything that's repetitive motion where you're just doing something over and over again with joints, you can have damage to those joints, and you can cause damage that sooner or later is going to get you. Some of the worst ones I've ever seen I had over the years, carpet layers. Those guys are down on their hands and knees, pushing in.
The knees are hard,
Yeah.
So
I watched some carpet one time and banging their knees up against the thing.
Some of the worst, I think, joints stuff I've ever seen was from some of those guys. So because they really, it's a repetitive trauma, and which always goes back to that same old thing that we talk about all the time: inflammation.
Inflammation, and even tendinitis, which is common with joint. I mean, anything that's repetitive also. Again, tendinitis, inflammation of the tendon. So you can have inflammation of the joint, you can have inflammation of the tendon, but they all make pain. Pain is just a sign that something is wrong.
Right.
And when there's a sign that something's wrong, it tells you maybe start doing something different to keep it from getting worse. Even when people do have a job that's repetitive motion, understand people have to do their job, but try to change it. We always say, do it differently. Don't do the same way every time, and it's hard, but I mean, it is possible.
Yeah.
All right. It's 8 minutes after 9 o'clock, 896-0713 or 800-349-0713. Our phone lines are open to you. We're talking about joints, or if you have a question about anything regarding your health, please feel free to pick up the phone and give us a call. We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back. And welcome back. It's our Monday morning live edition of the Doctor's Nutrition Show. We're talking about joints this morning. How important is exercise?
Very, very. Because with any joint, motion is what keeps it lubricated. Because the joint does lubricate, and if you don't move it, then it won't lubricate, and then you can't move it.
Yeah. See, joints don't have a blood supply, taking fresh blood in and bad stuff out and stuff like that, like muscles do. But so joints have to have, just the movement actually creates a fluid movement, over time, which actually gets the good stuff in there, and it actually creates the formation of something called GAGs, G-A-G, glucosaminoglycans. That's what actually lubricates the joints. So if you don't move, it'll lock up. I had just a couple weeks ago, I had a lady in with a frozen shoulder, and you can't. She obviously she couldn't move it, couldn't raise her arm, whatever. And that's one of the problems you get into when you don't move a joint, is they will freeze up.
Yeah. And another thing that is so important, because like he said, you have to have the fluid movement to make fluid go in and out, is hydration.
Yes.
If you're dehydrated, it affects the joints.
Yeah.
Dehydration affects everything. But people don't think about dehydration affecting their joints, but it does. Because you're not going to get the fluid needed to go in and out without being hydrated. So there's no doubt exercise is important, hydration is important, and then if you're starting to have a problem, there's a lot of supplements that definitely make a big difference.
Yeah.
Do red light therapy help with joint issues?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, we had a caller just ask about red light therapy. Yes, it does. There's no doubt about it. And we've got a lot of people that use the red light therapy for that reason, simply because of various joint issues. I'm one of them, because I've got all kinds. And it's a lot of repetitive trauma over the years. You know, you just
car accidents, thrown off horses, motorcycle wrecks.
all the above.
All that.
Jumping out of
fast
airplane.
life.
Yeah,
huh?
all that catches up to you when you get older.
I had a dear friend one time tell me, said, "You've led an adventurous life." I said, "That's one way to put it."
I've never jumped out of an airplane, but I have been thrown off of a couple of horses.
Well,
the
ground is
done
hard.
both,
It's tough.
But yeah, the light therapy does make a difference. It helps with healing and recovery.
Right.
It's probably, the research on it is probably as much on the muscles as it is on the joints, but it does help inflammation. So anytime you help inflammation, you actually help the joint itself. But at the same time, it helps the mitochondria, which is the powerhouse cells of the cells, which actually produce energy, and that just helps recovery, anti-aging. There's a lot of things. So there's a lot of things that red light therapy does help. So yeah, that's really good. But back to, we were fixing to talk about the supplements that are actually good for joints. I think most people have actually heard of the glucosamines.
I just mentioned glucosaminoglycans.
And that's why, you know, your body has to have those in order to help clean out the joints. But what we use a lot is PernaMax. Now we have different ones, but that's the one we use probably the most. It is the best. It has a lot of research, the Perna, on stopping further degeneration, which is what you have to do.
The thing about Perna is a food. Okay, so it's highly digestible. It comes from something called the green-lipped mussel.
From New Zealand.
From New Zealand, okay. It's the only place in the world, believe it or not, that it's actually grown. And they actually farm these things now to raise them in the pristine waters there in New Zealand. But the Perna has all 9 classes of glucosamines. See, our body, a lot of people say, well, I take glucosamine chondroitin. Typically, that's one, maybe 2 types of glucosamines, maybe some of the small chondroitins. When you look at Perna, it has all 9 different classes of glucosamines, and it has all of the various chondroitin sulfates, which are about for the connective tissue around the joint, which is just as important as actually the joint stuff itself.
And it's got the also it has all your chelated minerals naturally occurring, and then in our product PernaMax, we add to it some MSM, which is methyl sulfonylmethane, which is great for joints as well. It's a sulfur source. We have boswellia, which is really good for inflammation. And it also has some glucosamine sulfate added to it, because glucosamine sulfate is your main glucosamine, and we do add it to it to have a little higher amounts of that one. So that product makes such a huge difference on joints. But people should start doing it before. Like I said, if you start having the first symptom, start taking it. It ain't gonna hurt you. And the only people that can't take it, I should say, are somebody with a shellfish allergy. Because Perna itself is a mussel.
It's a shellfish.
And so if it's a mussel and you're allergic to mussels, well, yes, you can't take it.
Now, we have other sources of glucosamine.
We do. We have some vegetables. We have vegetable sources for vegetarians. They don't work as well,
quite as well,
in my opinion.
They don't.
You know, we have other glucosamines, you know, but I don't think they work near as well as PernaMax. Now we have everything that's in PernaMax separately, like the MSM. We have the boswellia. We have all that, and collagen. Collagen's another thing that's really good for joints, because collagen is what helps hold everything together. And we do have all various different types of collagen. So there are so many things we have in our store for joints, because joints is such a big problem.
It's a big part of our life.
Yeah, it is.
Because when you lose the function of a joint, you realize just how big that part of our life
it makes a lot of pain.
Another question from a viewer: what helps with neuropathy in feet?
Well, we always say first you got to figure out the cause.
Right, that's
the key. If the cause is diabetes, got to control the diabetes first. But we do have something called NeuroRenew that does help heal the actual nerves themselves, but you got to control the sugar also if it's diabetes. Now, if it's a B12 deficiency,
that's totally different.
B12 deficiency can cause neuropathies as well, or if it's a back problem.
And everybody,
that makes neuropathies too.
Yeah, everybody, you know, when we talk about diabetes, well, I'm not diabetic. Okay, I understand. But we probably have, most likely that everybody that's that's watching this show right now has some sort of what we call metabolic dysfunction, because 88% of the population has metabolic dysfunction, which leads to insulin resistance, which leads to diabetes.
Right.
So you might be in some of the early stages, but necessarily headed down that road.
Yeah.
So that's the thing.
But you got to see, is the neuropathy from a low back problem? Is it from diabetes? Is it from a B12 or folate deficiency? You got to look at where it's from first, and then you do something for that problem.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. What helps with pain in fingers?
If it's actually arthritis, because that's commonplace to people to start seeing the pain, and that is PernaMax.
Oh, yeah.
There is no doubt. Huge difference. I always say you feel it first in your hands and your knees for some reason.
You use them more.
All right.
Yeah.
It's 17 minutes after 9 o'clock. We're going to take a break and we'll come back and we'll have this week's special. Bet you probably guess what it already is. We've talked about it enough already this morning. We'll be right back. And welcome back to our final segment. It's almost 20 minutes after 9 o'clock. Let's go ahead and look at what this week's special is, and it is...
Guess what?
PernaMax.
Right, yes. We talked.
We already talked about it.
I think
so
we've talked
kinda
about it ad infinitum.
Yep.
So yeah, but it is 25% off this week. And if you've got any inkling that you might have a little problem brewing, now's the time to start.
Yes, like I said, don't wait till it to get severe. And even like with hands, people would ask that question. Yes, it definitely helps with hands. Now, if you have the hands that are completely crippled looking, it'll help the pain still, but it is not going to reverse a lot of the damage that's already there. So that's why you want to start, if you can, before the damage, but it will help the pain even if there's already severe damage to the joints.
Yeah.
Can a bad diet contribute to
Yeah. Definitely.
joint problems?
Because a bad diet contributes to inflammation. And inflammation is the problem.
Right.
If you've got an inflammatory state going on all the time due to your diet, okay, then yeah, it's going to wind up in joints. It's going to wind up in a lot of other places too.
Yeah.
Let's think about heart, liver, lungs.
Like we mentioned
So what's
before, all disease starts with inflammation.
Yeah.
And so you want to get down inflammation. Another thing we haven't mentioned that is unbelievable for inflammation is SPM.
Yes.
Special pro-resolving mediators. We've talked about it before, but a lot of the research on it's been done at pain clinics because people that were in chronic pain, and a lot of these people with chronic pain, guess what it comes from? Joints. Not all, but a lot of it is from joints. And you know, how many people have chronic back problems or chronic, so the SPM, it really works well for stopping the inflammatory response.
What kind of foods should you avoid? I mean, with the nightshades?
Well,
nightshades
the nightshade
are
plants
always
for sure,
wonderful.
and your sugar. You know, sugar and gluten and
Actually, fructose is probably the most inflammatory food that you could possibly consume. So think
That's
about
almost like in everything.
that's
It
fruit
is.
sugar.
That's one of the problems. Anything that tastes sweet has fructose. Glucose, which is the other part of, say, table sugar, 50-50. Glucose, fructose. The glucose part, think about a potato. It's not sweet, it's glucose. All right, think about the fruit part, which is the fructose, it's sweet. So anything that tastes sweet has fructose. Think about your sugar sweetened beverages. Think about juice. Oh my God. People say, well, I don't do that. I just drink orange juice. Do you realize ounce for ounce, juice has more fructose particularly, but more fructose per ounce than a sugar sweetened beverage?
Wow.
Yeah, I saw something online even this weekend, just scrolling through, that showed which foods will surprise you that have more sugar than a Twinkie.
That's a lot.
And actually, it was a lot of the foods that people think are good for them.
More sugar than a Twinkie. I didn't know.
Yes.
They
I didn't know
had
either.
more
Well,
sugar than a
actually,
Twinkie.
a glass of juice.
Really?
Yeah.
A glass of juice has more sugar than a Twinkie.
So you're better
And
off eating
I'm
a
just
Twinkie.
saying this is what this
Better off eating a
article
Twinkie,
said.
right?
And then it, you know, even yogurt. A lot of the yogurts out there are so high in sugar. You start going through it and things that people think are granola bars. That was one of them. So there was a lot of things that people think of as healthy that aren't necessarily healthy because they're loaded with sugar.
Right.
So you just got to kind of watch the sugar, and that does make a difference with joints. But again, hydration and movement are essential for joint health.
You have another instrument that you use at the
Yes.
which I have used.
We do have a class 4 laser. We don't promote it a lot because sometimes we don't have the staff to be able to do it. But it works wonders if you have a one joint problem.
Right.
Which it did for me.
Yeah,
Because
you don't do whole body.
But no, I did.
You do one
my-
area.
My right hip, I was having some issues with the joint
And
there.
it had been hurting for a while.
Well, I had been hurting for a while, and I got up on the table, and they run me through that thing real good, and yeah, it made a big difference.
Lasers make a huge difference. They really do, and it's just on one joint. So like on hands, it ain't really what you want to do because there's too many joints there.
Right.
But if it's a single joint problem, yes, the Class 4 laser does wonders.
Yeah.
I was trying to see if we had, that's a question.
There's a question, but it doesn't have a...
Well, there's something about lower limbs. I would have assumed.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, there you
What's
go.
the best tip for neuropathy in lower limbs?
Control sugar. That's number one.
Again.
We cannot emphasize that enough.
Yes.
Because when you look at it, back to the statistic, 88% of the people watching have a metabolic dysfunction. That means you're getting too much sugar, you're getting too much inflammation. It may not be inflammation that you see, like, okay, the knee's all puffed up and swelling, but there's inflammation there on a local place, in a local part, and that's what's causing the problem.
again,
That's the thing.
Find out what's causing the neuropathy in the lower limb, because you know, if it's a low back problem, then something like that laser does wonders for it. Because the laser really helps neuropathies. But you got to see where it's coming. But if it's coming from diabetes because your sugar's so high, the laser isn't going to control it unless you control your sugar also. So you got to look at the sort. We always say in functional medicine, you got to find the cause. So you got to look at the cause first.
Yeah, and you know, and a lot of people think, well, you know, I'm not diabetic, my A1C is only 5.6. Research has shown us that when that A1C gets above about 5.5, we're starting to have some pretty serious problems brewing in some of these people. You know, may not be there yet. It might take 5 years, 10 years down the road. Maybe it's been brewing for 10 years, and eventually it causes a problem. So even though you think, well, gee, I'm okay. I'm on my A1C. I have people all the time say, well, they told me my A1C was 5.8, but it's okay.
It's okay. Well, no, it's
well,
not.
No, it's not.
It's actually causing damage. And so you definitely got to figure, and the B12 deficiency. We see so many people with B12 deficiencies. It is unbelievable how many we see. And so those are known to make neuropathies. And that's actually one of the easier neuropathies to fix if it's coming from a nutrient deficiency, because then guess what? We just fix the nutrient deficiency.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, another question. What can help a very weak bladder?
The Kegel exercises, if you're really saying weak bladder, Kegel exercises are one thing that definitely helps bladder. But we do have a product called Bladder Manager, I think they call it. Bladder Manager, something like that. Bladder control. It's Angelica is what it is. It's an herbal product that is actually for helping the bladder. But if it is from weakness, sometimes exercise is what I would say first for weakness.
Yeah, and you can go online and those Kegel exercises. They're all over the place there, so you get those. And it's a really good idea to do that too. That would be first line of treatment right there.
Kegel exercises.
Yeah.
There you go.
It's usually women that do them more than men. But,
More so, but men can. But men do it.
But it's normally women that call us more about bladder issues than men. So we don't know.
Where it goes.
26 minutes after 9 o'clock. Probably got about a minute left. It was, just heard it in my ear. 1 minute left.
1 minute. Psychic.
The gods have spoken. So if you have a question real quick, 896 or 0713-800-349-0713. Next week, we're talking about something that most everybody has. Oh, here's a question. What causes numbness in certain fingers?
That's a neck problem almost always.
Typically speaking, yeah.
That usually comes from a nerve. If it's specific fingers and it follows what they call dermatomes, almost always coming from the neck.
Depending on which area of the neck.
Depending on which finger it is and where on the finger. That does make a difference.
All right. Like I was saying, next week we're talking about something that pretty much everybody's had one.
Headaches.
Headaches.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about headaches. I think we've done a show on it before, but it's been a while.
It's been a long time.
It has been a long time.
All right. Well, anyway, thank you for being with us. Don't forget you can go online to YouTube and subscribe to their YouTube channel, The Doctor's Nutrition, their Facebook page, as well as if you need information, you can go to doctorsnutrition.com. We will see you again next Monday morning for another edition of The Doctor's Nutrition Show.
For more information on highlighting your business and services on Healthy Living South Mississippi, contact Jim Tabor at 896-1313.